listening to, I say you are listening to, you are absolutely listening to the George Espenlaub Show, coming to you live from the Funny Farm. Now, with no further ado, here comes Georgie!
Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. Oh, you always make me laugh. You give me that. You give me that warm, fuzzy feeling every time we come on the air, and it's just a delight to be here. You're listening to the George Espenlaub Show, coming to you live from the Funny Farm in a place called Our World. As I say each and every time we're on the air, we have two goals in mind. One is to make you smile. Regardless of your situation, regardless of the circumstances that surround you, we want to bring a smile to your face. And it would even be better if we could make you laugh once or twice. The second goal is we want to make you just as crazy as the rest of us. Yeah. And if we can do one of those two things, we will be happy. If we can do both of those things, we will be jubilant. Beyond words. I do want to make this announcement real quick, and then we're going to get ready to get going here. We were just informed late this afternoon.
Here it comes again.
That our radio show is being aired on iHeartRadio. So you can tell everyone that the George Espenlaub Show is now airing on iHeartRadio. We're on Spotify, Castbox, shoots up to YouTube. I don't really know where we really are. All I know is we're out there flying through cyberspace, and I want to thank everybody down the street, around the corner, across America, and around the world that listens to this radio show, be it live or you come back and listen to it later on. Thank you for all of your support in the past, now, and for the support you'll be giving to us in the future. There was something else I wanted to say, and I can't remember. I'm notorious for that anymore. The only thing I remember is I forget. But tonight, we are going to get serious. That's right. We're going to get serious. Every now and again here at the Funny Farm, we do get serious. I want to ask you to do something for me. Most nights, I tell you to get up and move. And we play great music, and we laugh, and we have fun, and all kind of crazy things take place, and we have different people calling in, so on and so forth. Tonight, I want you to do just the opposite. Here's what I ask you to do. I want you to find a place where you can sit down. If you're out walking, taking your evening walk, if it's evening time, wherever you're at, whatever you're doing, I want you to sit down. And if you can't sit down, I want you to do this. I want you to listen. Now, we hear things every day. There's a lot of noise in this world, believe me, and most of us don't like noise. We hear it, but we shut it off. We don't listen to it. Tonight, I want you to not only hear what this man says, I want you to listen to what the man says. He's a man that's been there, done that, and in fact, he's still doing it. And I want you to really listen. Take it into your brain housing group, process it, think about it. I believe he's going to challenge each and every one of us. And what we do with that challenge is entirely up to us. I've said many times on this radio show that we are in dire straits in this country in more ways than one. This is one of them that you're going to hear about tonight. So please, call a friend, text a friend, however you reach out to find somebody, reach out and tell them to come to the George Espenlaub Show, excuse me, here on Spreaker.com and listen to what Mr. Ed Temple is about to say. I would really appreciate it if you would listen, not just hear, but listen tonight. So tonight, sit down, buckle up, and as I say so much in a jokingly manner, friends, Romans, countrymen, tonight I really ask you, lend me your ears, both of them. Tune them in, plug them in, and listen. And now, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Ed Temple. Ed, welcome to the George Espenlaub Show.
Thank you for inviting me on. And I don't know if I can handle an opening like that. That was outstanding.
I have said, and people that listen to us all the time, they might get tired of me saying this, but I have said many, many times over that if I can hear a person's heartbeat, I know they're for real. And I told Cliff Stevens this the other night, and I'll tell you tonight, I've already heard your heart beating in our past conversations. And so I know you're real. I know you have a mission. I know you carry a heavy burden. And I know that this is God sent, God given, and you're God called. And so I would ask you to do me one favor. Before we go any further, tell the people a little bit about yourself.
Well, my name is Ed Temple. I just released this year a book called Escape from Uncle Sam's Plantation. That go on that people don't find out about in the news, and it's just scary. And it's just not a place in most, and I'm not going to say in every case, but often school safety is a major concern, in particular in the bigger city schools. But it's not just there; it's starting to creep a little bit in just about everywhere. Which is why I wrote the book, because I make the case that it's your tax money. It should be your choice to choose a school that best fits your child's needs. No.
I have no idea what's going on. Can you, if you're in the chat room, help me out? Can you hear me now? I sound like that guy in the commercial. because we just we just don't need this, and if need be, we'll not be defeated. We'll rewind this puppy and start all over again. But we're not going to be we're not going to be defeated for sure. Let me ask these people here. Can you hear me? I guess they would have answered me if they could have. Let's see what we get here. She said, back up. Back up. Okay, back up. Whatever that means. Help us out here. Yes, we're okay now. All right, okay. Man, I apologize for that. I don't think I've ever had that happen before. But nonetheless, onward and upward. Onward and upward, right?
You got it.
How many years did you teach in the public school system?
Well, this is my third year at the Christian school, and so I started teaching in '97. So it's been quite a while.
Yeah, and
I don't like to think of how many years. I just want to keep going.
and you taught what was it, math and social studies?
Yeah, I'm certified to teach any of the math courses, and then also the social studies courses as well. So I've taught everything from psychology, sociology, American history, world history, algebra, algebra 2, pre-calculus, calculus, SAT, ACT, you name it, I've taught it.
Wow. Let me ask you this, because I come in contact with people all the time, and everyone that I run into says something along these lines. The school system is broken. Public schools are broken. Teachers can't teach. Not that they can't teach. They're
right.
So caught up with all the other things that they have to do, is that they don't teach like they used to teach when I was a kid going to school.
Right.
And I hear things along the line, kids are terrible, and it goes on and on and on and on and on and on.
Well, I can hit on all of that.
On one hand,
yeah.
On one hand, I hear that. On the other hand, I see, each district has its own school board and so on and so forth, but I see very little, if any, people going to the school board meetings, approaching the administrative body and saying, look, we've got to straighten this thing out. So on one hand, we say one thing, and on the other hand, we don't do what we need to do. Am I somewhere in the ballpark?
No. Yeah, you're right in the ballpark. So I'll start from the end, which you just said. I'll start from the latter.
Okay.
There's not a whole lot of parental support, in particular in the inner city schools. There's no question about that, and that creates a problem, because then it's you have a system that's not put in check, so they can get away with pretty much doing whatever they want.
Mm-hmm.
And so that is a problem. But to be clear, when I speak out against or speak for school choice, I'm not saying that kids are the problem or even teachers themselves are the problem, but I say the system is the problem.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll give you an example. I taught a class. Now, if you are a special ed teacher, you typically have 10 to 15 students. In the public school, they will take a regular ed teacher, put 30 students in the regular ed classroom, and 15 of those students are special ed.
Uh-huh.
So you have students in your class that you're not really certified to teach. I mean, you can teach them, but the teacher that's supposed to be the certified teacher with them is the special ed teacher. In particular, if they are lower functioning. And of course, the special ed students have in particular, if you're talking about ED students or emotionally disturbed students, they're easily agitated and a huge distraction in the classroom. If it's just one, you may be able to control it. But you get 15 in a classroom, it creates chaos. So oftentimes you spend all day trying to get control of the class, and then by the time you get control, you have maybe 15 or 20 minutes of good instruction. So it just destroys the atmosphere. And then of course, the kids, because of the federal 10-day suspension rule, the kids understand the rule if you're in special ed courses. And so those kids just wander around the building knowing that they're not going to get suspended because they can only be suspended for 10 days. So that's just one end. But there's a lot of other things. The discipline problems, the principals are pressured not to suspend students. So often they're sent back to classrooms after being sent out of the classroom for disrupting. So what you have is an atmosphere where the students feel empowered, and the teacher is left afraid to do anything but to pass this kid along. So if you want to fly under the radar, just pass everybody along. If you want to end up downtown, grade kids based on what they do. In other words, give them the fair grade, which would be a disproportionate number of them are going to fail because, for example, at a school I was at, the average student missed 15 days per 9 weeks per quarter. And technically, if they were to miss 7 days, they were supposed to be automatically failed. Well, that rule was never enforced. And then, of course, they found ways around the days that they missed by having the parents retroactively sign off that they were absent excused. And typically those weren't valid excuses.
We are living in perilous times. Our education system is broken, and as you said, it's not the teachers, it's the system. I've talked to teachers in a couple of school districts, and every time I talk to the teacher, they always tell me, you know something? We can't teach. Our hands are tied. And it goes along with just what you were saying. And so our system is broken. How long did you have this book in your heart?
I probably, towards the last few years of teaching, I probably considered, or I wasn't really thinking about writing a book about it, but I wanted the truth to come out. I was trying to find ways to get media people to come into the school. I told them, I said, listen, I'll invite you in as a guest speaker, and you can see for yourself what goes on. And they were afraid to do it. So somebody somewhere has told them they're not allowed to do that. And so that was that was one thing we tried to do. That's for me. My heart was to expose it, but I didn't know how to, because it's just speaking out will get you in trouble. I mean, I've watched teachers complain about the air conditioning unit in their room, and the very next year they just found a way to get rid of that position. It's just, you don't speak out. It's very, it is a very, let us say, difficult situation to expose what's going on, because you will quickly get rebuked.
Ed, can you perhaps explain what's behind all this? I mean, why? Why there's so much animosity?
Well, that's a great question. So there's a lot of, we'd have to go way back, but, ultimately what we have is that we have as I state in the book, it's one of the chapters, and we have unholy alliances. We have unions that are in bed with the political party, and in turn, they do each other favors. It's like a kickback system. And so even if the lawmaker may do something that's detrimental to the union members, but the union members have paid all kinds of money to get this person elected, and then of course in turn they also will get favors. And so there's, for example, maybe they get Maybe the lawmaker wants to pass a health care plan, like Obamacare, for example.
Mm-hmm.
The union helped to get the president elected. Well, it turns out that this created a real problem for the health care for our school system. I mean, it went berserk, and it wasn't until they lobbied that some of it got reversed. But in the end, it never has returned to what it was before, and they're paying a ton more, which means that's going to cut their ability to ask for more in salary and so on and so forth. So it causes real problems, the unhealthy relationship. And of course, the teachers, even though about all around 30%, I just saw in an article, Education Weekly, I think it was, and it said that over 30% of teachers consider themselves Republicans. Another close to that percentage also say they are independent. So over half of the union members are either independent or Republicans. Yet the union only supports Democrat politicians. So I have been in the public schools for over 2 decades, or about 2 decades, and they never once endorsed a Republican. Although they say they're nonpartisan, that is a joke. And so the problem with that is, of course, then, knowing that there's that unhealthy relationship, the union becomes more of an ideological machine than it is an organization to help teachers or the students. And that's where the problems start. And of course, you can go all the way back to getting prayer out of school and so on, if you want to trace all the research back to when schools started losing their touch, their morality. And of course, if you don't have the morality, then of course everything else seems to fall apart.
This is true. One lady said in the chat room, so teachers are punished for trying to do what's right. I guess it basically comes down to that.
That's correct.
When you did you announce it when you were still in public school? Did you? I mean, I don't mean that you got on the public address system or anything, but did you let people know that you were in the process of writing a book or?
No way.
No.
No, I didn't. No, I wouldn't do that. No, I wouldn't have done that at all. That would have doomed me. That's for sure. So no, I wouldn't. All they need is an excuse to get rid of you. The union will stick up to you up to a point. Mm-hmm. If you're doing something, they will help keep the worst teachers on board. But if you're not in their ideological way of thinking, it's pretty much you fit in for yourself. They'll sit in the meeting and they won't even defend you. So it's a very the relationship with the union and its members is unhealthy because they, I'll give you an example. They did a survey with us and they said these are the things we want. Well, they didn't do any of those. They went right to the ideological left and did the agenda of the left. They never did do anybody in the middle or to the right. Very interesting how that works. Yet you pay all kinds of money for union dues.
I have always said, and more so recently, as I see more and more things take place, and you hit the nail on the head when you mentioned unholy alliances. That has gotten many people in trouble throughout history. And when you do that, you're stepping into a quagmire that you are not going to get out of anytime soon. And I'm afraid that that's where we're at. Do you, and I hear and I see, my dad used to always tell me, you don't need to tell me, boy. He always called me boy. You don't need to tell me, boy. Your actions will speak louder than your words. Do you think that many folks out here in America can see for themselves what's going on? It's just that they feel if they deny it, it'll go away? Or am I totally...
Well, no, I think they don't know any better. They don't know what their options are. If they knew, the surveys say, when you see the surveys, the American public is very much for school choice.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the only ones that kind of shut down every time I talk to them about it is public school teachers. What I have to say is that not that they disagree with it. It's just it is a threat to their way of life, because initially it would probably mean that at some level, if everybody had school choice, a vast majority of parents would be sending their kids to something other than the public school they're attending. Now, there's exceptions to that. In the suburbs, some of the suburbs, they have pretty good school systems. And, in fact, their property taxes are so high, they probably would feel guilty to send their kids somewhere and pay twice. So, but in general, no, I think the biggest hurdle is just the knowledge of school choice, number one. And number two, they can't, because they don't qualify. Because it only, every state that has school choice has criteria.
Right.
What the criteria should be is school choice for all. And when I mean school choice, I mean the taxpayer funds should follow you to whichever school you want.
Right.
And everywhere that's, Florida right now, before I left Florida, Florida was not doing very well academically on national tests. And now in some cases they are top of the list. So their school choice clearly is working there. No doubt about it.
Delaware, we have school choice, but like you said, there's a criteria that you got to jump through hoops and do cartwheels and all those other kind of things. What ever happened to school vouchers?
Well, there's Ohio has them, Indiana has them. There's several states, Arizona's tinkering with them. I think Oklahoma. There are a lot of states that are tinkering with the vouchers, but it's kind of early in the process. They, of course, they get a lot of resistance. Which the irony is, if you hear a lot of these unions speak, well, there's two big ironies. The leading education book in the country, and she was the assistant education secretary under Bush. Her name is Diane Ravitch. She's got a book out. She's very pro public school education, and she goes after politicians on both sides. So I'll give her credit for that. Mm-hmm. But the problem is, she speaks out against school choice, but then we check into it a little bit and find out that her kids went to private schools. The irony of that. And then a lot of publications, they always they want to pat the Europeans on the back for how great their schools are. Well, those same school systems that they're patting the backs of have school choice. And so as they're pointing to those schools as the best, they're also admitting that school choice is working in those countries. And so if you want to model them, they might put their foot in their mouth, because modeling them would mean school choice is the way to go.
Let me ask you this question. I've been dying to ask you this. You are a Christian.
Yes, sir.
How hard is it for a Christian to, as an educator in a public school, how hard is it?
Well, of course, it probably depends on the area. I would say when I was teaching in Florida, it was no big deal. Teachers could have scriptures on the wall, and it was it was just fine. Of course, I was teaching at a rural area, in a very small town. So, on the other hand, where I was at, everything seemed to be offensive. I painted a flag on my wall in the classroom, a brick wall, and principal said, "Don't you think that's going to offend somebody?" The American flag. But in terms of Christianity, I carried a little pocket Bible with me when I was on hall duty, and the students would ask me, was I allowed to read from that or to have that in school? If we had I had a cross in my room. Remember, I told you I taught world studies. Uh-huh. I had the lawyer from the school system they called me up and said, somebody has pointed out that you have a cross in your room. Now, I had taken over this room. The cross was already there. And they said, well, you need to take down that cross. And I replied to the attorney. I said, well, first off, I'm not going to take it down. I didn't put it up there. But the second reason I'm not going to take it down is because I teach world studies, and it's part of the curriculum. So he came back with, well, then you can keep it up there the week that you teach that and then take it down. I said, no, sir. I went and read to him a court case that was had just occurred not too long before he was questioning me about this, and I read him the court case, and then he left me alone. Court case basically says as long as you put other symbols, including atheist symbols, along with the religious symbols, you haven't violated anything. And as a matter of fact, the court case went on to say that if students ask you about whatever religion you are, you're allowed to explain to them what it is and, anything they want to ask about. Now, you don't have to, but you're allowed to. So this idea of where they want to squash free speech, it's just the public schools right now are so afraid. Ohio, for example, wanted to teach that, like Pennsylvania started to do, they wanted to teach that the other theory of creation. Besides the typical biology that, we're this big accident and voila. Well, the creationists, or not just creation, but the people that wanted to teach intelligent design, they got it put in because at Ohio State there was a big debate. We had the three of the best scientists on each side of the issue, and the Ken Ham-led group won the debate. And, so we modeled after Pennsylvania, and it wasn't shortly after that, after they put it in the curriculum, they took it right back out because they got afraid for all the different organizations, the Freedom from Religion organization and the ACLU pressured them to take it all out. So God is just not going to be allowed in the schools as of now.
I remember when I was a young man growing up, that's when we went to school in caves and we wrote on the cave walls. That was our blackboard.
Yeah. Wow.
But when I went to school, every morning it was the teacher, regardless of what grade it was, all through high school, from first grade all the way to high school, the teacher would read from the scripture, and then we would say the Lord's Prayer and pledge allegiance to the flag. And we had several people throughout my educational years that didn't participate in pledge allegiance to the flag or anything like that. But they stood very reverently, very respectfully, and we respected them too. But there was never, you offend me for this, or I'm offended because of that, because we just knew this was what the grounds we stand on. This is the foundation that we're built on, and that's the way it is. But all of a sudden, one woman, Madeline O'Hara, turned the world upside down, and I often thought, one person with...
Yeah, well... And her son becomes a preacher.
Yes, and her son became a preacher. But what I'm trying to say is one person had so much influence and so much power, and was able to reach into the hearts and minds of so many other people, and the Christians allowed it to happen. And before you know it, prayer was taken out of the school, the Word of God was taken out of school, and now look, you talk about those unholy alliances. It just keeps going back to what you said, unholy alliances. And we live in dire straits, just bottom line.
No question about it.
Your book, Escape from Uncle Sam's Plantation, what is it? There's 12 chapters, and then the 13th is the conclusion.
That's correct.
The plantation's failed attempts to fix problems it helps create. And I think you you touched on that a little bit, where they say one thing, do another.
Yeah, well, they say, for example, they may start they may start a reading program, and it may last for 2 years, and then they get worse results. And of course, the reading program costs thousands and thousands of dollars to institute. It fails to get results. The person that came up with the plan has already got promoted and sent somewhere else, and next thing you know, a new plan has to come in to fix the results of that plan, and it just keeps going and going. And of course, the main thing that you'll hear, what it's going to be asked for, is we need more money, more money, more money. So the solution is always more money, not let's try to do things the right way, give them a chance to work, and so on and so forth. The blame is never directed in the right place. The emphasis isn't put where it belongs. And of course, as I already mentioned before, it is the pressure to pass kids. It's not just, it's all over the country. As a matter of fact, not just the pressure to pass with the teachers. I think you've heard all over the country, there's been instances, whether it was in Atlanta, Georgia, or different parts of Ohio, all over the country, there's even administrators getting in trouble for changing grades because they get their bonuses based on passage rates and graduation rates and so on. And of course, that puts teachers in a box, because the kid knows that in general they're not going to be failed. So, and of course, as far as politicians go, they make all kinds of red tape and make it nearly impossible for a school to succeed. And of course, what do they do to solve that problem? They create another law. And so it goes with not just with the school systems, but the politicians. They just keep on making more and more bureaucracy, and which is why charters and private schools, one of the reasons why they do so much better is because they don't have as much red tape. They have more freedom to operate, which is unfortunate. The public schools should have freedom to operate as well, but they don't. So as of now, the immediate solution is school choice.
And in your book, there's another chapter. Why does the public schools lower the bar?
Yeah, right. And that's what I was alluding to, is that they lower the bar instead of, for example, Ohio. You can speak of any state for this, but if enough kids don't pass a standardized test, they'll just lower the requirement.
Uh-huh.
So I remember one year I was teaching the requirement to pass the math test. I think you only had to get something like 40% of the questions correct to pass and be considered proficient. So proficient is an F, which is stunning to me.
Right.
And of course, and it's just, even with the ACT and the SAT, they've lowered the bar on that a lot of times. If too many kids get, they don't have the right score, even the ACT has at one point said they were going to line up the ACT with the Common Core, and very few people in education, if you ask them without the cameras on, support the Common Core. And of course, for the most part, all around the country, people have found ways to get rid of the Common Core, but it still hangs around. The remnants are still there.
Right. My wife and I, during the school year, we carry kids back and forth, like to the elementary school and to the high school and so on and so forth. I about blew a gasket several years ago. I don't know what they're doing out there in Ohio, but here, these kids are starting to go to school when they're 3 and 4 years old. And I'm thinking, somebody fell out of the wheelbarrow and bumped their head somewhere along the road. This is total insanity, and it's becoming one great big daycare center. And then on the other hand, I usually carry kids that's in middle school, high school, but over the years that we've been doing this, every now and then I'll I'll ask a kid that's riding with me. I'll say, because I always have something to read. I'll say, I try to read this paragraph 2 or 3 times. I just can't get it. Read that to me. Maybe it'll come to me if I hear it from you. And it's a shame. It's a shame. Not all students, but far too many students can't read. And a man told me many, 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 many years ago, if you can't read, you can't learn. And so it's just this big glob that just keeps on rolling and rolling and expanding and expanding, and it don't get no better. It don't slow down. It just seems like it's totally out of control, and so you end up leaving a public school system. Now you've got your book out. You're teaching in a Christian school. Draw the contrast between the two.
Well, let's start with managing the class. Mm-hmm. Now, there are elements in all schools of problems. It's just that it's all to scale. So if I'm in class in the Christian school, in the private Christian school, which I'm sure very similar schools all around. Well, first off, you don't have kids strolling in late between classes. They're gonna, for the most part, they come in on time. Now there's the attitude about class is serious. When you go to some of the public schools, like I said, when you already know ahead of time that the teachers, they know how to play the game. When they already know they're going to be, for the most part, passed along, well, they can come in and go whenever they want. Mm-hmm. And so that the whole attitude, the difference also, let's say in Christian school, the kids are talking about whether their faith, or they're talking about their what school they're going to go to college, what they're going to do for their sports team. In the public school, the only real conversation I heard almost on a daily basis, and I wouldn't be the only one to tell you this, is what fight happened yesterday, what fight's getting ready to happen, or who was shot, and so on and so forth. Very different atmosphere. And then, of course, when you're in the public school, at least in the inner city public schools, you try to call for help. And you're lucky if somebody comes up to help you. And then you'll ask later, why didn't you guys come up? Well, we were taking care of other situations in the building. And so it's just constant chaos. Or as us, our kids are rarely. We had, I think, in a whole academic school year, the worst thing we had in the hallway, as far as the high school goes, is an argument by friends. That's about. There was not a fight in the school. And to be honest with you, the kids care about each other. It's just a whole. The atmosphere is 100% different. You don't see all the pretension. You don't see the gang banging. None of that stuff is going on in the school like in the public school. The public school is just a totally different mentality. Now, again, not all public schools are the same.
Right.
But I've dealt with a whole bunch. Even when I was in a big school system, I used to teach in the summer, and it would be kids from all over the city, whether they were there to improve their grade or there because they needed to redo their grade from a failed course. And I got a little bit of everybody. And so the same issue, even within the city, there's some good and there's some bad, but it's the system that is the major problem. Just because they have, as the book alludes to, it's just lowering the bar. Now they talk a good talk that they're going to raise the bar, but at the end of the year, when it's time to decide what the grades are, or at the end of the quarter, the pressure comes in. They'll say, "What can you?" Talking about the teacher. What can you do to get the kid to pass? Not what can the student do. What can you do? And then, of course, there's other things too that are different. I can email a parent at the school I'm at, and they respond, and the problem's done. I can't get a hold of anybody when I'm in the public school. Very difficult. Numbers keep changing. Very difficult process to get a hold of anybody, and when you do get a hold of them, they're often very upset with you for calling them. Right. So it's a different mindset, and largely because in the public school, from the beginning, the relationship with the parents in the school is not the same. It's not a close-knit relationship. It's more of you're just a name and a number, and that's not the way it should be.
Let me ask you this. There is a price to be paid for everything. And I don't care what point you go to in history, there has always been a price to pay for whatever it is. Do you remember the old oil filter commercial where the man said, "Pay me now or pay me later"? I asked people that.
I don't remember that.
Yeah, he used to. There was a TV commercial. The guy would hold up this oil filter, and it was a Fram oil filter, and he was trying to distinguish, of taking care of your automobile, so on and so forth, but he was promoting Fram oil filters, and he said, "You can pay me now, and do the maintenance and have your automobile running fine.
Right.
Or you can pay me later for a big, major automobile expense." So
exactly,
it's either pay me now or pay me later, but each and every one of us, in some way, shape, or form, are going to pay, and that pertains to our children that's in this education system. I've heard so many people say, "I can't afford to send my child to a private school, to a Christian school, somewhere outside the public school. The public school is free." And I think, really?
Yeah. The average public school student. Well, let's put it this way: if money solved the problem of the schools, the United States would be in the top 4, I believe, in all the school systems in the world. I think we're the per child expense is number 3 or 4. We're right up there in the top 4 or 5. So that's clearly not the issue. But on the other hand, the public school system, for example, I think in Ohio it's around $11,000 or $12,000 on average per student. Mm-hmm. But if they took their money, their tax dollars, if those same $12,000 went to a private school, that would put you in just about any private school you wanted to go to, except the very most expensive.
Right.
So, so the bottom line is the private schools are doing a better job at a much lower expense. As of now, it would save the taxpayers quite a bit of money if the money followed the student. As of now, the public school actually benefits when a student leaves because they still get a big chunk of the property tax money, and the school gets a few $1,000s from the state to go to the private school. So they actually get money for a student that doesn't go to school there.
Let's take the difference. Pay me now, pay me later. In someone that goes to a public school, and I agree, not everyone that goes to a public school has a problem. There's some great kids in public schools. They're really on the ball. They're sharp. They want to learn. They're willing to learn. They're respectful, and so on and so forth. But, being a Christian, we all know that there's consequences to our actions, regardless of what it is, what it might pertain to. And it was taught throughout history that what you do today is going to have a consequence, if not today, tomorrow, but it's going to have a consequence. If you do good, good's going to happen. If you do bad, bad's going to happen. And so you talk about these kids that's in the right environment, and they are learning, and they're being challenged, and their peers aren't looking down on them because they're trying to learn, or they're not being called nerds, and all the things that goes with peer pressure. They're going to blossom, and they're going to bloom into something beautiful. So it's pay me now or pay me later. It's just where you're going to come out of is going to determine what you're going to be. Am I correct?
Well, just to be clear, I went to the public schools,
Mm-hmm.
and what I found out is when I went to college, I figured out how much I didn't learn when I was in school,
Mm-hmm.
and that was my first, little asterisk next to the next part of my life was, wow, what did I miss out on? And of course, in the public schools that I went to, it was the same thing that's going on as I was teaching in public schools. Just a lot of chaos.
Mm-hmm.
Not saying at all times, and I'm not saying at all schools. And I'm not even, I'm not saying you can't get an education, because a lot of times the public schools are very good at taking tests because they shut down and they cater everything to them. Called one thing that we did a while back was called scripted education. They literally were teaching teachers to all teach the same thing by the minute with the same exact material.
Mm-hmm.
It didn't work out for them, but they tried. So don't be surprised if that comes back again.
Mm. Before we go any further, Ed, tell me and tell the listeners, where can we get your book?
Okay, the book is all over. Actually, Barnes & Noble in Columbus, Ohio is selling one. But online, you can get it at Barnes & Noble. You can get it at Amazon. You can get it at ChristianBooks.com. There's all kinds of ways. If you just Google "Escape from Uncle Sam's Plantation" by Ed Temple, you'll have a whole lot of options. And the book is in paperback, hardback. It's also on Kindle, and it's on the audiobook now. It just came out on audiobook just a few days ago. So if you don't have a lot of time to read, put it on audiobook. You can listen to it in the car, listen to it at home, get through it in about probably two and a half hours. You can get through if you let it run all the way through.
When you speak to parents, or let's just say when you speak to people outside, when you're outside the Christian school, so on and so forth, and they ask you, maybe they say something like, "Ed, I don't know what to do with my kid," or this and that and everything. What advice do you give people?
Well, if they're going to a failing school, I tell them right away. I give them the website to go to and say, hey, try to get your kid. See if that's a failing school, get your kid into a school that accepts vouchers. In other words, get them out of the public school.
Mm-hmm.
Now, and once again, I'm not against public schools per se. I grew up in the public school system, although I never had the opportunity to go to a private school. I wish I would have. But what I can say is that there's just, if a kid is going to is in an unsafe environment, or even an environment that, let's say, doesn't respect their values, whatever their values are, then they should be able to, their parents and them should be able to decide, you know what, maybe there's an alternative, and they shouldn't have to pay twice. Why should a parent that's paying taxes, everybody, one way or another, pays their property taxes and so on?
Right.
Whether it's renting a house that's paying the taxes, they're paying them. So that money is your money. I never forget when I called a district that my boys live in, and I said, can I take the money that would go to pay for them to go to school in this district, can I take it to the Christian school? They said, well, no, we can only send it to another public school. I said, well, that doesn't sound right. And that's how they operate. So the Christian school or the private schools get discriminated against. They aren't allowed the same money that another public school gets the opportunity to get. And that's not right. And you shouldn't have to pay twice. You shouldn't have to go broke for your kid to go to school. It's not fair. And it's, to be honest with you, it goes against the Constitution. The Constitution doesn't say that we have freedom from religion. We have freedom of religion. People have it backwards.
Hey, isn't that the truth?
It is for sure.
I was looking over these chapters. And chapter 10, it said flawed arguments against escaping the plantation. Yeah, the plantation. What's some of those flawed arguments?
Well, I'll give you an example. One of the arguments I kind of alluded to was that people say, well, the public schools do better on standardized tests than charter schools, for example, which, you can go back and forth on the arguments for that because every study has a counter study. Mm-hmm. But what I do know is about the public schools will shut down. For example, we used to shut down school for weeks at a time, just to prepare for the standardized test. So by the time it's done, literally to this day, because I know it's still going on, to this day, they shut down the last up to 2 months of school in the big public school systems just so they can test and prepare for tests. So you're losing a ton of instruction time. Now, where I am at now, that doesn't happen. We don't cater to the test, but we still have 100% graduation rate, and so that's the part of the flawed arguments. Are, well, hey, we're better test takers. Well, there's some cases. Oh, well, they also make the case. Well, if there was school choice, it's going to ruin the public school system. Well, that's not true either. What they found is that when the schools have competition, they actually step their game up, and the results actually increase. So there's a whole lot of things like that. With respect to the arguments of escaping, but there's, like I already said, the best school systems in the world, at least as far as if you want to go with standardized tests, international tests, are those school systems that have the ability to choose whichever school you want to go to. In other words, if you lift the regulations, if you lift the stranglehold, the monopoly that they currently have, we can actually get to a better place, which would be, maybe you want to go to a Christian school, maybe you want to go to a vocational school, maybe it doesn't matter. Whatever fits your child the best is where you should go. Now, currently, 80% of those that choose to use vouchers are going to Christian schools, whether they're Catholic or regular Protestant schools. Mm-hmm. And guess what? The number one reason on all the surveys for people to go to outside of the public school, that is the number one reason. But guess what? The number one reason why the union, this is what they are saying, and what their leading advocates are saying. Guess what? The number one reason they don't want you to get the choice to go to a school, to leave the plantation schools. Guess what their number one reason is? The number one reason they say is because they do not think that you should be allowed to use your tax money to go to a religious school. So we're in a dichotomy here. We have one group saying, this is why I want to leave the school system, and the other group saying, no, that's why we don't want you to leave. We want you to be indoctrinated in our schools. So there's where the split happens.
That's a good word, too, indoctrination, yeah.
Exactly.
Ladies and gentlemen, get Mr. Ed Temple's newly released Escape from Uncle Sam's Plantation. And I'll get you to fill in the gaps here in a second, Ed. Let's see. Amazon, Barnes & Noble. It comes up on Kindle.
ChristianBooks.com.
ChristianBooks.com. Go ahead, brother. Say it again.
It's on all kinds of Abbey books. You can get it pretty much everywhere. Anywhere that sells, it's just about any major book company that sells books. Textbooks.com, everybody sells it. And Amazon's probably the quickest way to get it. And like I said, if you're a busy person and you need, and you don't have the time to sit down and read, and it gets you an audiobook. It'll do the job just the same. But Kindle, audiobook, those are two popular formats, or you can get the paperback or hardback if you want that as well.
This is a endless conversation. I mean, because we could just go on and on and on and on and on, because it's interesting, it's vital, it is. I think everybody in America needs to hear it, and they need to listen to it. Let me ask you this, as we wind this thing down, Ed. What do you see for the future? Do you see the foundation crumbling all around us? Do you see the underpinning just coming down with the educational system? What what do you feel about it?
Well, I think it comes down to whether school choice wins out or it doesn't. I think that's right now the way it can be saved is with competition and with kids getting out of unsafe, ungodly schools. If you want to stay in your school, stay. That's fine. But the issue is right now is it's too far gone. To realign the ship, it's too far gone. They can't fix themselves. They've already proven that. Mm-hmm. So the only thing that's going to fix them now is the fact that they don't have a choice because they'll lose everybody. If they can get to the point where they can say, you know what, it's school choice for everybody, there will be a huge exodus out of many of the public schools, and that's what they're worried about. They know if they give people the choice, they're going to opt out in large numbers. And so I think that's also the only way it's going to rewrite this ship, because as it stands, they're too far gone. The leadership, you're not going to get rid of people for many years, even if there was a fresh crop of folks that had their heads screwed on correctly. The ones that are in there now for the time being in the leadership, these big unions have way too much pull, way too much access. And so it's going to have to be rewritten. The script is going to be rewritten by the momentum of school choice. Just hopefully we do the school choice the right way, where it's all money goes, not just part of the money. They need to give up this. The tax money should follow the kid, not a percentage of it, the entire. And it shouldn't be for one group of students, not for just the poor, not even for just the middle. If you're a wealthy person, you pay taxes like everybody else. You should enjoy the benefits. There should be no playing politics with who gets the vouchers.
Right. So I guess it's going to come down to this. Each and every one of us are going to have to decide where we stand. And we're going to have to stop hearing, and we're going to have to start listening. And when we do that, we're going to have to start acting on what we know that we should do. Is that correct?
That's exactly right.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, it has been a delight to have Mr. Ed Temple with us tonight. And I really do, I trust that each and every one of us heard Ed. We just didn't listen to him, but we heard him. And I would encourage everyone that listened, everyone that will listen later on and in the future, get this book, because it is the old saying, worth its weight in gold. Escape from Uncle Sam's Plantation. We got fire whistles going off around here, and it's been thundering and banging and booming, and so if you hear any of that in the background, that's what's taking place. But we're still sailing along outside that little bit of a quirk that we had in the very beginning, and I do apologize for that, Ed. Where that came from, I don't know, but then again, Espenlaub's capable of most anything, planned, unplanned, regardless of what it might be. Mr. Ed, I sure do appreciate you coming, and I'd love to have you back.
I'd love to come back.
Yeah, come back, 2, 3, 4, 5 months from now or whatever, and
I'd love to do that.
Let us know the progress and how you're doing, and when was the book published?
It says it was published in January. In truth, it was published early February, middle of February. That's when I started getting book sales, and the middle of February, I think, is when it was really released.
And is it doing all right?
As far as Amazon goes, it's as of yesterday. The audio, actually this morning, audio book was number 6 it's in a category called Federal Education Legislation. Three of the versions of the book are in the top 100, and 2 of them are in the top 50. One of them was as high ranked as 6th as of this morning. So I'll have to go back and check and see if it's still. Last I checked, I think it was 8th. Hopefully it moved back up.
All right.
Yeah. So
Sounds good. Ladies and gentlemen, get this book, Escape from Uncle Sam's Plantation by Mr. Ed Temple. Ed, keep on keeping on. Don't grow weary in well doing. And all those good things. Tell your family that we send our love and our prayers, and we'll have you back. You got my number. Call me anytime that you want to chat.
Okay.
We'll stay in touch. It's been a delight, my brother. Thank you very, very much for coming.
I appreciate your kindness, and I appreciate all your kind words, and I love your show.
Thank you, sir. Wow. There was so much to digest. And boy, I could just kick myself for whatever we did here, me or Charlie, or me and Charlie both. I don't know. Whatever we did it. I was trying to figure out how many minutes it might be, but wow, get that book, Escape from Uncle Sam's Plantation. We only touched the tip of the iceberg. I mean, there's just so much information on there, but I hope that if you listen to it live tonight, you take it to heart. If you hear this on a replay or you want to download it, take it to heart. But let's get the word out. Go to my page and read about, see some of his bio and all those things, and let's really push this book, because it affects all of us, ladies and gentlemen. It affects all of us. We need to be educated, and we need to be educated in the right things. Here's what we're going to do for a minute. We have Mr. Cliff Stevens with us Monday night, and we're going to go back and we're going to play one of his sounds all over again. I just love his music, and I've heard from him since then. So now you can stand up and move around. The chat room's still open, but get up and move around and loosen up, because everyone here at the Funny Farm is going out to the dance floor, and listen to this. Let me tell you this, and then we're gonna ride this puppy out of here. Friday night. This is Wednesday. Friday night. You don't want to miss it. I tell you that every night. You don't want to miss it. Remus Tucker from the Remus Tucker Band out of Denver, Colorado, will be with us Friday night at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Go to Google and just Google Remus Tucker or Remus Tucker Band and listen to some of his music. I'm telling you, it will rock your socks off. It really will. And Remus will be with us. He was with us before. He's coming back. He'll be with us Friday night at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So you don't want to miss that. He is one terrific guy. His music is just it's totally awesome. And as far as I'm concerned, we have some of the best in the world that come here on this show, and we're going to continue to do so. And we want you to be a part of it. There's something else I'm supposed to say before I get out of here. Yes. Maxine and Walter asked me if they would, if I would say something about them. I can't even begin to say anything about them. But I'll tell you what's interesting. Have you ever been to a ring bomb party? I know. What in the world is a ring bomb party, Espenlaub? Well, to find out for yourself, go on Facebook and type in there Unicorn Chasin'. That's Unicorn Chasin', Chasin, with Maxine and Walter. Unicorn Chasin' with Maxine and Walter. And you can see what a unicorn, what a ring bomb party is. I'm getting as goofy as them two. But if you've never been to a ring bomb party, you go to Unicorn Chasin' with Maxine and Walter, and you will find out what a ring bomb party is. There are some tremendous and most beautiful rings that's being revealed. Because, wow, they are a trip, they are a pair, and like they always say, they're not ordinary people, and by no means are they any ordinary people. They're coming on live, I think, on Facebook with their ring bomb party here after a while. They didn't give me a time, and I thought Maxine would call and tell me what time, but they're going to be on after a while, so I was told to mention that, so I did. I mentioned that, okay? All right, ladies and gentlemen, tonight was a thought-provoking interview with Mr. Ed Temple. And again, we thank him very, very much for taking the time out of his busy schedule and coming on the air with us. And like I said before, we're just touched the edge of the tip of the iceberg when we was talking about such an enormous subject as this. Get his book, Escape from Uncle Sam's Plantation. All the book places, you get it audio, Kindle. Go to his blog site. I had it here. His blog site is on the George Espenlaub Show page on Facebook. You can go to his blog site. You can read his bio. But get behind this man. And not only get behind him, let's all walk beside him. And let's do something to change things. Things are broken. It's one thing to look at and say, yep, it sure is broke. Well, let's roll up our sleeves and, if the wagon wheel fell off, let's put it back on. If the whole wagon was demolished, let's build a new one. But let's do something other than complain and gripe and groan. Let's do something positive, something that'll set an example for our grandchildren, for our children, and will last a lifetime. Will you do that for me? All right, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, friends, Romans, countrymen, wherever you might be, down the street, around the corner, across America, or somewhere around this world, until Friday night. Good night, God bless, and be safe.